we have the BCCI as well as the board has the capacity and the money to keep all these people under a biosecure bubble. Not that they have not done the effort, but I'm not sure whether they have kept a proper vigilant to ensure that everybody is in the bubble and it has not been breached.
Hi guys, and welcome to Straight Bat. Once again we're here with Anis Sajan, Mr Cricket UAE, and Sham Krishna from Gulf News. I'm Matt Smith, and we're here to talk about a very concerning development that we've had in the IPL with its, what shall we say, it's indefinitely postponed at the moment, and we don't really know what's going to happen. So we'll go straight across to Anis, and what's the take on the development over the past 24-48 hours?
Thank you, Matt, and hello, Sham. Like if yesterday's match between RCB was called off, it was, a sad sign for the fans. But today's news must have made them more gloomy. Like what happened today was the final nail in the coffin when the IPL board decided that the IPL has been called off indefinitely, and we don't know probably when the next window is going to come for it.
Okay, and Sham, obviously there have been a few telltale signs that this might have been on the cards, but it kind of snowballed fairly quickly, and we've came to a very quick decision by the IPL.
In my personal opinion, it was always coming, because you can have the bubbles, but how secure is the bubble is the issue. Because given the transmissibility, the rate of transmission in India, and it's been spreading fast, and it's not isolated to one or two venues across the country, so this was coming. Only thing, the IPL guys refused to see it because they were more keen on getting the tournament away, because this was a dress rehearsal for the World Cup. So they have to get it right. If they get it right, only then they can think of the T20 World Cup. Now in this case, so they have to get it done, and finally, I mean, it was not a surprise for me to see the bubble breached, because there are far too many variables when you are playing across 6 venues and flying across the country. This was bound to happen.
Mm-hmm. And it's obviously, we've seen previous protocols being very well adhered to in the UAE with Formula One, the cricket, tennis. Were there abject failures here, do we think, in keeping the bubble secure?
Without a doubt, Matt, you see the alarm bells rang for the IPL organizers even before the tournament started. A couple of players had already been tested, like Akshar Patel, and I can't remember the other player, Nitish Rana. Before they went into the bubble. Moreover, the groundsmen at the Wankhede Stadium had also caught COVID. So that alarm bells should have been loud enough for the organizers to understand that what all things could come in the near future, because it's not a small tournament, and like Sham mentioned, it's put into 6 cities. So that was an initial alarm bell which had rung. At that time, they could have probably taken little more extra steps to plug the gaps. Now, my discussion here will be a little longer, Sham, but I'm sure you would like to add some points to it. The first point, when you are having a tournament across 6 cities, you need to travel from one city to another city. Like the first few matches were held in Mumbai and in Chennai. So the matches went off smoothly because they were all in that bubble. But the moment that one team went from Mumbai to Ahmedabad and the other team went from Chennai to Delhi, there is where you are risking the players, even though if you are going in your charter flight, you're wearing your PE kit, because this virus is in the air. When I say is in the air, all the people who are running the charter flight are not a part of the bubble. So this is one very important point, and I probably can say with conviction, one of the main reasons the IPL in UAE got successful, because the transport was on land surface, where they were traveling by bus from Dubai to Sharjah, Sharjah to Abu Dhabi, and vice versa. But in this case, you cannot be going by bus from from Mumbai to Delhi or Delhi to Chennai. You need to take a flight, correct?
Absolutely.
So this is one major cause which is triggered, or probably the bubble has been burst.
And Sham, obviously, as we said there, it was quite clearly what I was just about to touch on is even though they travelled between 3 different venues in the UAE, there was no having to go through major transport hubs. They were doing it on secure buses.
No.
Was that the major failure here?
That this is one of the failures, and that's a very, very significant one, because if you look at the timing of the breach, this is you can safely assume it has come through one of this could be one of the areas. Then another area which they I think I read in one of the website or news websites is they say that Anis was talking about the flights. The same goes for people, the cooks, the people who serve them, the butlers, everything. Some teams they carry their own cooks with them and the butlers with them, which makes sense. But not all teams do that. So they would expect a hotel, because the hotels are given a standard operating procedures and told them, okay, you have to adhere to that. But who is overlooking that, or who is supervising that? The hotel finally have employees, and these employees are not part of the bubble.
Mm-hmm.
So one speck is enough, right? So it could have come from anybody there.
And that's it. And it literally just needs that one little chink in the armour as to, as you said, the bubbles burst.
Yeah.
Like
no
Shah
longer
mentioned
safe.
about the cooks, I still believe the hotels must have kept the cooks in the hotel itself. But the groundsmen, like who are doing the watering or making sure that the ground is ready. Now, as I mentioned in my earlier talk, that in Mumbai this had already happened. Now, what I understood from the Delhi, one of the important people who said that no, the players who got tested in the Delhi stadium, they were not present at the day when this news broke out. But I'm not sure whether all these groundsmen were given a proper room or a biosecured area where they could be staying like the players are staying. Because who is keeping an eye on this groundsmen, whether they are going and meeting their relatives out?
Well,
These are
absolutely.
small things, but very important thing, because the groundsman comes in touch with the players because he's a part of the association.
We hear from day to day in the tabloids in the UK about even footballers themselves that are breaking these violations. So how is it possible to keep a cap on everybody, from the guy mowing the lawn to the guy that's in charge of the floodlights in this bio bubble? I mean, it's you're talking about thousands of people now, aren't you?
But it's not impossible. Mm-hmm. You see, if you are, like Shah mentioned, that they wanted to have this tournament done and dusted because they wanted to have the World Cup happening in India. So when you have such a big plan of a World Cup happening, you got to ensure that you plug all the holes. Now, whether it is the groundsmen or whether there are 1,000 people, it's not a big deal. We have the BCCI as well as the board has the capacity and the money to keep all these people under a biosecure bubble. Not that they have not done the effort, but I'm not sure whether they have kept a proper vigilant to ensure that everybody is in the bubble and it has not been breached.
Okay, now this brings me on to the next question, which is essentially, where do they go from here? Can this be resurrected in India? Can this reach a successful conclusion in India?
Well, I'm afraid not at the moment. I will just like to add one more point here, Sham and Matt, is the third point. Like we've heard about the first day, rather yesterday, about Varun Chakravarti testing positive, and it came out from the one of the sites which said that he had gone for a test, and he went through the green channel. Now, what's a green channel? He goes through the ambulance or the bus or the van provided by the league. But he is going in the PE kit and in the ambulance. But when he meets a doctor who is doing the test for the shoulder or whatever problem he had, is that person in a bubble? He is meeting so many patients. So that is, I am a bit surprised and perplexed that you are talking at one side that he is going through a green channel, and the doctor, even though he is in PE kit wearing a mask, but he comes across so many patients. So in this case of a virus, it does not catch immediately. It comes to you or contracts with you maybe after a few days. And that is what has happened in the case of, I'm afraid, with Varun Chakravarti, and which went on to his colleague Sandeep Warrior and the rest of the team.
Mm-hmm. Now, as I said, where do we go from here, Sham?
I mean, where do we go from here? Because if you look at it, it is not a cancellation. They have cleverly worded it. They're calling it indefinite suspension, which means it could be resurrected at some point in time. So resurrecting in India, I don't see it happening immediately, or not in this year at least. So if you don't finish this league in this year, it ceases to be IPL 2021. So the other option with them is to hold it in the UAE. Now, even whether it is in India or in the UAE, the cricket calendar is packed, so they have to look for windows. Windows as in areas where there are not any international matches. So immediately, what happens now is India goes to England. Then you have for the World Test Series Test Championship. Then they come back here. Then that's a September window open. After that, I think we have the New Zealand coming over to India. Then after that, it's a small window before we go into the World Cup. Now, these two windows can be used, but then you are going into a series of double headers if you have to finish in time. So, whether it happens in India or in UAE, you have to do that. But I don't think given the rate of transmission and the COVID situation in India, I don't think it's going to happen in India. If it happens, if they have keen on finishing it has to be the UAE.
Okay, so either way, it's a logistical nightmare.
Absolutely.
They've got to fit it, and even maybe split it over two windows, as you said.
Yeah, yes, that is the another key area. Like, even if the small window, when you have to get all these players back and put them into a bio-bubble for at least 2 weeks.
Of course.
So 2 weeks of your window is gone. So
Yeah.
which means that window is not enough to run it. So you have that.
So where do we go from here?
Like Sham mentioned, there's a window in September. But as he also added that if I have to get a player, he needs to be at least a week to 10 days of quarantine. So that 10 days goes away in a strict quarantine just to ensure that the players are not positive and when they finally reach the ground or meet the other players, they're fully negative. So that 10 days goes away. Now if you're talking about 31 matches still pending to be played from the incompleted IPL, and then you talk about holding an IPL, rather the World Cup, which is almost around 30 more games because you need to have a pre-qualifying games about the associate nations. So we have 3 grounds here in UAE, which is Dubai, Sharjah, Abu Dhabi. Now, last year they managed to hold 60 matches. I'm sure UAE is capable of holding 60 matches. You just need to see how the wickets are going to behave. Will it be tired wickets or will it be wickets good enough to produce enough runs? Because T20 people want entertainment. People do not want slow and dead wickets where the ball doesn't come onto the bat, as we saw in Chennai.
And that's also not including, once we get into the later part of the year, rain sometimes happens here. So we could get a lot more trouble on the ground.
Well, that's a foresight. If you have to have rain, you will have rain.
Yeah.
But let's presume that the IPL finishes in September, which it will take at least a month by October, because I remember last year when the IPL happened here, it started on September 10th and finished on November 10th. It was almost 2 months.
True.
And then the World Cup, the scheduled dates for the World Cup is October end to November 14th. So how they can, juggle with the dates and ensure that both the events can happen in UAE, we need to wait and watch.
It's really a very tough ask.
But not impossible, Sham.
It's not impossible, but it is tough.
If there's a will, there's a way, and if there's a checkbook, there's normally a way. But I think that the health of everybody involved is more paramount now, and I think that's where we're at. Not obviously just the players and the people in the bio bubble, people in the hotels, but also in India as a whole. Are we seeing maybe a slight movement that this is just a game, and there are bigger things at play at the moment, then maybe this should be put to one side?
I fully subscribe to that view because sport finally is entertainment. It's a distraction. It's a pastime. It is a passion for some. It is basically an entertainment for some people. So, but when you are up against COVID, it is a health crisis really. So, do you want to have a party in the midst of a pandemic? Not for me. For me, that is inappropriate, insensitive, and careless. In fact, I would say it's obscene. So, I would say, although this happened by sheer accident or I would say accident because it was not planned in the sense these cases showed up and they had they
didn't foresee.
they actually didn't foresee it just happened. So it was a kind of blessing in disguise for IPL, because otherwise down the years we'll look back at IPL and say that in the middle of a pandemic you had a party.
Yeah, some sort of callousness maybe around
Absolutely.
it. Yeah, and just the one last thing that you just touched on there as well, the World Cup. Is that now pretty much a shoe-in that it will come to the UAE, or do we think that India will still try and push to host it?
Before I touch upon the point about World Cup, whether it will come to UAE or India will still push for it. But like Sham mentioned, that in hindsight, it was a good decision taken by the board to call off the IPL finally, because you are risking the life not only of the players or the grounds people or the people, the stakeholders. So I think wise decision was taken when they realized that no, now they can't get this tournament done because there were cases. And let me be very honest, this was foreseen by a few players that the bubble is not secured, that's why they left. A lot of people, like even me, mentioned that it was fatigue. I don't think a player like a Zampa or a Andrew Ty, who gets an exposure like this, will run away from this place, from the IPL, saying that it is fatigue. It is probably foreseeing that no, there is danger, because they did not find the bubble secure. Now coming to your point about that the IPL and the World Cup will come to UAE, at the moment UAE looks to the best venue for the ICC, and I'm sure ICC will also now will think twice whether to hand over to India to run the World Cup in India. The rights will be with India. Now whether they can run in India, as you said, whether will they be able to run India, it all depends how the turnaround happens about the cases coming down. Like we saw in Mumbai, the cases have dropped drastically.
Yeah.
But you cannot have a World Cup only in Mumbai. It needs to be done in 6 cities. So, and there is a chance of a third wave coming, which generally comes in November. So will they risk the ICC? We need to see. So the best venue would be UAE, and if not UAE, then would be Sri Lanka probably.
Yeah, they're looking at Sri Lanka, but I think as having held an IPL here, I think they know how secure and they know this environment.
It's tried and tested.
And also the COVID situation in the UAE is very much under control, and not just from the India point of view, you have several national teams and from people from outside coming here. So, which means the COVID situation is under control, and people.
And is it not more of a logistical place to come to?
Yeah, and not just that, people feel secure, because like Anish is saying about Adam Samba, he clearly said that this is the biobubble was vulnerable. He went on. Okay, he later went back on it, but the thing is, he spoke his mind the first time.
Yes, he had the feelings.
Yes, absolutely.
And the fears are there, so that's essentially.
So that fear is not here.
Yes.
Because we have had major events happening here, like you had last year's IPL, then you had the European Tour Golf, 2 events of the European Tour Golf here. Then you had the tennis in Abu Dhabi, you had tennis in Dubai. Then recently you had the cycling tour.
Yes, and also the Formula 1.
Yeah, and Formula 1. So you have all the major events.
And they all went off without a.
And everything went off without a hitch. So to me, the best bet is UAE.
And we are fortunate, you see, we have been all vaccinated here. When I say we, means the people who are running the show will definitely be vaccinated. So that helps you build your immunity. Okay, the players definitely will be still vulnerable. But if you plug all the holes, when I say what is a biosecure bubble? Is to ensure that you are away from the outside world. You don't come in contact with the outside world, where you make sure that it's not breached. So in a scenario, if you want to have a tournament, whether in UAE, whether in any part of the world, if all these things are not plugged and it is not secured, it will not run anywhere. So the good part about UAE, the IPL happened here last year, it was successful. The other events which you all discussed was successful. So I don't see any reason why the IPL would not come in UAE.
So again, just like a chain is as strong as its weakest link, the UAE has proved that it's a strong environment in which to host these events.
Yeah, and several times over actually.
Yeah.
And mind you, the Expo is also coming here. So UAE is gearing up for something very big.
Yeah.
So holding an IPL event and even a World Cup would be a challenge for UAE, but I'm sure they are hands-on, and the people who will be given this responsibility to handle the biosecure would be also knowing what they are doing. they will not make the mistakes which I'm afraid has happened in this recently happened IPL, and they will try and learn from the mistake. How do you plug the small gaps? And if they can foresee all this can be taken care of.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, guys. I mean, I think we've covered everything there that we can do so far. Obviously, things will develop over the coming days, and we ask you that you log on to golfnews.com and our social media channels so that we, you can keep up to date with everything as it happens. And of course, our guys here, including Mr. Cricket himself, will keep you all up to date as things do develop. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Sean.